What if I told you that there was an NBA legend who refused to throw a normal pass? From insane no-look dimes to his iconic assists on the Showtime Lakers fast break, Magic Johnson wasn't just flashy, he was the best and most accurate passer the game has ever seen. But how did he master this skill that led to 5 championships, 3 MVPs, and assist records that may never be touched? And what rare illness stopped him from having the most assists in NBA history? Well, to find out, we have to go back to 1976. Earvin Johnson is at home in Lansing, Michigan, when all of a sudden, the star basketball prodigy would receive some tragic news. Reggie Chastain, his former running mate at Everett High School, had been involved in a horrific car accident that took Reggie's life. Johnson was destroyed, vowing to dedicate his senior season in honor of the man who had taught him so much. So, Earvin, who had received a unique nickname from a reporter in his sophomore season,
I covered the game for the Lansing State Journal, and I congratulated him on the game, and then I said, "Earvin, we've got to name you something." And I said the Big E's out because of Elvin Hayes, and Dr. J was out because of Julius Erving. How about Magic? And he says, "It's okay with me, Mr. Saban."
Started their 1976-1977 campaign on a tear. Magic, in an attempt to mirror the style of Chastain, was scoring relentlessly, playing with the same confidence and swagger that his dear friend Reggie once did. However, despite averaging 45 points, his head coach pointed out something that shocked Johnson. "You're scoring too much. If we're gonna win a championship this year, it'll take a team effort. The other guys have to get used to taking some of the important shots. You need to distribute the ball, get those other guys involved." Therefore, knowing deep down that his leader was right, Magic began making some changes. Now, instead of just highlighting his scoring talents, Earvin was showcasing another skill that he had always possessed.
When he's a little guy, the shots that he would have open, he wouldn't take them. He started passing the ball, and he started kind of passing kind of tricky actually.
Passing, a mindset shift which saw Everett High School go on to incredibly defeat Brother Rice and be crowned as state champions of Michigan for the 1977 season. But having proved himself as one of the hottest prospects in America, Magic had a serious decision on his hands. Where should he attend college? An issue only made worse by Earvin's physical traits. You see, Johnson, unlike most point guards, stood at 6'9" tall and weighed in at around 220 pounds. Therefore, the majority of schools calling the state champion were interested in using him in a way that he didn't agree with. Yet, there was one man who knew how truly gifted Magic actually was as a passer: Judd Heathcote from his local college, Michigan State. However, Johnson was hesitant. He had heard that Coach Judd was a man who constantly berated and demeaned his players, which for Earvin, a man who wore a smile on his face from dawn till dusk, wasn't something he was interested in. That was until Vernon Payne, a former collegiate standout at Indiana State and current assistant coach at Michigan State, informed Earvin that Heathcote simply cared about his players and their success deeply. The yelling and screaming was just Judd's way of teaching, and that playing under Heathcote would guarantee his success in the future. So, Magic did this.
Is there any questions before I get started?
One question.
No, next year I will be attending Michigan State University.
While it did take his brand new teammates at Michigan State some time to get used to how insanely talented their new point guard was at passing,
Earvin's the type of player that could hit you when you were open, and oftentimes he knew you were open before you knew you were. So I got used to playing with him and always watching for the ball because it might come out of nowhere.
they would eventually figure it out, meaning MSU, thanks to not only Earvin's contributions of 17.1 points per game, but a United States leading 7.9 assists each night during his freshman and sophomore seasons, would find themselves in the 1979 National Championship game versus Indiana State and their own superstar, Larry Bird. So, could Magic achieve the near impossible and win both a high school and collegiate championship? Or would this random dude from French Lick, Indiana spoil his night? March 26, 1979. In what was a seeming contrast in styles, the two sides were locked into an intense battle as the night went on. A game that would not only set a record in 1979 as the most viewed collegiate game in history, but an event that still holds that same record to this day. While Larry Bird did finish this night having dropped 19 points and pulled down 13 rebounds, he was ultimately trumped by Magic's 24-point, 7-rebound, and 5-assist performance. Stats that saw Michigan State emerge from this epic night as national champions. Yet this was just the start for Earvin Magic Johnson. Because the NBA was calling, but who would be selecting him? The Chicago Bulls or the New Orleans Jazz? By the way, before you go crazy in the comments, the Utah Jazz used to be based in New Orleans, thus the name Jazz? Well, before 1985, the two worst teams in each conference would simply flip a coin to decide who got the first pick. Bulls fans voted for their general manager to choose heads, but the New Orleans Jazz didn't pick tails. No, the Los Angeles Lakers, who had received New Orleans' 1979 draft pick in a trade for Gail Goodrich all the way back in 1976, were instead the team waiting anxiously for the result.
First pick is the Los Angeles Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers select Earvin Magic Johnson, Michigan State, 6'8", 200 pounds.
So, how would Magic perform on the highest stage of basketball? October 12th, 1979. Los Angeles is down by a single point with 2 seconds remaining against the San Diego Clippers.
Sends it to Kareem. Sky hook up and good.
Magic was so fired up, and I was like, geez, we can't be at this emotional pitch for the whole season, or we won't make it to Thanksgiving.
The bond between the 5-time MVP and 1-time championship winner Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic began as soon as Johnson touched down in California.
First day of training camp, I said, listen, man, I'm here to help you. I said, where do you like the ball? He said, what? I said, where do you like the ball? I said, you like it high, you like it in the middle of your chest, you like it low. He said, no, I like it high. I said, that's where it'll be every single time. I said, I'm here to help you be more successful.
Yet, while many assumed it would take Earvin some time to get a feel for passing, Magic began doing some pretty insane things during his rookie season. Because Johnson would finish his initial campaign having recorded 5 games with 13 assists and recording 10 or more in 16 nights. But this wasn't all. As the Lakers battled their way to the NBA Finals against the Philadelphia 76ers, Magic was so close to averaging a triple-double by scoring 16.4 points, grabbing 10.1 rebounds, and throwing 9.9 assists each night. As the NBA Finals progressed, the addition of Magic seemed to be perfect. The Lakers, who had struggled to make it into the championship round since Kareem arrived in 1975, were steamrolling Julius Erving and his 76ers. Because after just 5 games, it was LA who found themselves just a single victory away from being crowned kings of the league. However, after their Game 5 victory, it was no longer Los Angeles who was the championship favorite. No, that title belonged to Philadelphia. But why, down 2-3, were the 76ers picked to win it all? Well, their main superstar, Kareem, had gone down with a severe ankle injury in Game 5 and was forced to remain in Los Angeles as the Lakers traveled to Pennsylvania for Game 6. But it wasn't actually everyone who thought LA would lose.
I sat in Kareem's seat on the plane, and I told the guys on the plane, and you can ask them all, don't fear, because 32 is here.
Magic Johnson would not only start Game 6 at center, but go on to achieve some truly amazing feats. Because the 6'9" Swiss Army knife athlete would not only throw 7 assists and grab 15 vital rebounds, but the man chosen by the Lakers less than a year ago would drop in an insane 42 points. An incredible night that would not only see Earvin be named as the most valuable player for the 1980 NBA Finals, but the Lakers being crowned champions of the world.
I mean, it just means so much. You can walk around with your head proud. The whole next year, everywhere you go, the world champion Los Angeles Lakers is coming to town.
April 5th, 1981. Los Angeles, due to finishing second in their division, held the 3rd seed in the Western Conference and had been battling against the 1979 MVP Moses Malone and his Houston Rockets during the first round of the playoffs. Also, for some extra context, first round series at the time were best of 3, which meant you only needed 2 wins to move on. Anyway. However, while the series was tied at 1 game each, the Lakers' play in Game 3 saw many assume that their failure in Game 1 was simply a small speed bump in their journey to win back-to-back championships, until disaster struck. The 1980 Finals MVP would tragically airball the series-winning shot, resulting in Houston moving on and the defending NBA champions being sent home in just the first round of the playoffs. Earvin was devastated, vowing to work harder than ever before to ensure something like this would never happen again. However, as the 1981-1982 season got underway, the Lakers' struggles only continued. Their head coach, Paul Westhead, had decided to introduce a brand new offense, going away from their fast-paced style and instead having the ball thrown down low to Kareem every single play, a decision that saw Magic and Coach Westhead get into an argument after a regular season game against the Jazz, in which Johnson would then request that either Paul leaves LA or that he would need to be traded. Magic would then make sure that he was subscribed to Out of Bounds, because he knows the insane amount of work that goes into every single one of these videos. So by subscribing, he ensures that he doesn't miss out on any of these incredible NBA stories. Paul Westhead was then fired the following morning, with assistant coach and former Laker Pat Riley being promoted into the lead role, a decision which would see Los Angeles only further dive into their fast-paced offensive approach. A change in gear that allowed Johnson and his Lakers, thanks to Magic averaging an 18.3 point, 11.6 rebound, and 10.3 assist triple-double in the playoffs, to sweep their way back to the 1982 Finals for a rematch against the Philadelphia 76ers. While Philadelphia would grab a key victory in Game 2 after their head coach, Billy Cunningham, exposed Pat Riley's illegal defense, the Lakers' high-octane offense was simply too much for the aging Sixers. Magic's 13-assist night in Game 6 was the cherry on top of what was his second championship and Finals MVP in just 3 seasons in the NBA. Earvin Magic Johnson, at just 22 years old, had already achieved more than most do in their full careers. But what was about to happen next would change everything for the superstar. Because despite leading the whole league in assists during the 1982-1983 season,
Earvin Johnson as the most unselfish player maybe in the history of the game.
As the Lakers made their way back to the NBA Finals for yet another series against the 76ers, Magic was set to face a new challenge. Philadelphia, knowing that just one star wasn't enough versus the dominant Lakers, had added the same player that sent Los Angeles packing in 1981, Moses Malone. A move which saw the Sixers decimate LA's defense and have them crowned kings of the league in just 4 games. Yet things just kept getting worse for Magic. However, to try and solve their issues, head coach Pat Riley decided to bring in an Olympic sprinting coach to try and speed up their already high-paced offense, a decision which their point guard loved.
I get so big, and then I'm coming saying, okay, what am I going to do? You know, you shaking, you baking. That's when I'm at my best.
LA, with Magic Johnson leading the way, only began to play faster and faster.
Because I told him, I said, listen, when I give it to you, I did my part.
Right.
I got them up out their seats. See, I got them up out their seat.
You just got to.
Now you got to do the rest.
Right.
See, now if you don't do the rest, I ain't gonna give it to you no more.
And the other Lakers understood one simple fact.
We just took off and running, and everybody was like, well, I got to get me a lane. I got to get me a lane, because we knew if you got out there and you filled the lane, Magic could get you the basketball.
A selfless mindset that all stemmed from his childhood.
My mother made me realize that you can gain a lot from helping other people.
Which would see Johnson take an insane leap, going from averaging 10.1 assists in their previous season to a league-leading 13.1 during LA's 1983-1984 campaign. The Lakers' Showtime offense, as it was known, saw them once again back in the playoffs, and it was on May 15th where the insane skill of their superstar would be on full display. Because in the second game of their Western Conference Finals matchup against the Larry Nance-led Phoenix Suns, Magic Johnson would set an NBA record which still stands to this day, as not only would Earvin throw double-digit assists, but during their 16-point victory, the Lansing native had racked up a mind-boggling 24 dimes to his Laker teammates. an insane statistic, which, coupled with the former #1 pick's 17.5 point average versus the Suns, saw Los Angeles heading back to the finals for their 4th time in Magic's 5th season. However, this time they were set to face a brand new but familiar opponent, Larry Bird and his Boston Celtics.
Earvin is an outgoing guy. He loves everybody. He wants to high five, and he got that big smile. My goal was to try to take 3 of them teeth home with me.
May 31st, 1984, LA, thanks to an 18-point and 10-assist performance from their 6'9" point guard, had stolen a key victory in Boston Garden during Game 1 and was looking to do the exact same thing in Game 2. However, with 18 seconds remaining and up 2 points, this happened.
Magic Johnson. Worst comes to worst, the Celtics will have to foul, and there's a steal by Henderson who lays it up and in.
Yet, despite gifting the Celtics a free layup which tied the game, it was still Laker ball, giving them 13 seconds to grab the crucial 2-0 series lead.
They're looking for Kareem. Magic Johnson keeps looking inside. 2 seconds, 1 second, and they don't get it off.
Once again, despite Magic blundering away a chance at a game-winning shot attempt, there was still the extra period, 5 minutes, in which LA continued to dominate, but Boston refused to go away. It simply didn't matter how many extra chances Los Angeles stole from the Celtics, because due to the barrage of blunders made by the Lakers, Boston had tied the series at 1 game apiece. Yet, 4 days later, Johnson's incredible response back home at their home arena, the Fantastic Forum, of 14 points, 11 rebounds, and 21 assists would see his Lakers firmly back in the driver's seat. However, it's what happened in Game 4 which truly changed this championship series for the worst. As with 16 seconds remaining and the score once again tied, this happened.
Watch the time. Rambis to Magic. Be sure they won't let the time run out this time as they did in Game 2. 8 seconds. Harris steals the ball and the Celtics call a timeout with 3 seconds to play.
I don't believe so. They're going to try and get Larry Bird some way popping out.
Dennis Johnson will inbound. There's a 5-second situation. Bird fires it up, misses. 1 second, McHale shot, no good, overtime.
To make things even worse, with 34 seconds to go in overtime and the game all knotted up at 123, Magic would fail his team again.
14 points in the second period. Johnson misses them both, Bird the rebound, and the Celtics want a timeout. Dennis Johnson with Cooper all over him. He can't do a thing. Bird turnaround, hits with 16 seconds to go. 129, 125, 3 seconds to go. And the Boston Celtics have evened this NBA World Championship Series at 2 games apiece.
With Boston grabbing a 3rd victory in Game 5, it seemed likely that for the 2nd year in a row, it would be Los Angeles ending their season in 2nd place. But Earvin had different plans. June 10th, 1984, motivated to no longer let his Lakers down, Johnson would shift gears and completely change his approach. Whilst Magic would record 10 assists and still pull down 6 boards, it was in the scoring column where Earvin did his damage. The former Michigan State Spartan would drop in a vital 21 points, resulting in the 1984 NBA Finals being tied at 3 games apiece, meaning it all came down to this. Game 7 at Boston Garden. Los Angeles finally had another chance to recorrect the course of their franchise's history versus the Celtics. As in all 8 battles between the 2 historic clubs, Boston had always come out on top, and to make matters worse, the Celtics had never lost the closeout game on their home floor at Boston Garden. However, with a minute and a half remaining and down 5, tragedy struck Earvin Magic Johnson.
To 3, with a minute and a half now remaining. Magic Johnson goes up without the... Now Johnson with the ball. The Lakers trying to cut it to 1. And he loses it. Final second. Cooper goes for 3. It's over. The final score, Boston 111 and Los Angeles 102.
You soul search, and then it makes you stronger. So in 85, you come out ready. You come out with a vengeance.
Yet, Johnson's incredible work during the following 1984-1985 season seemed pointless after Boston, in what was dubbed the Memorial Day Massacre, destroyed LA by 34 points in Game 1 of the 1985 NBA Finals. Perhaps the Lakers were forever cursed to never defeat the Celtics, and maybe Magic's early success was just luck. May 30th, 1985. In a shocking move, Lakers head coach Pat Riley permitted their other superstar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to bring his father on the team bus ride to the game. An interesting decision which had huge ramifications, because not only would Magic go out and record 13 assists in this vital matchup, but most of them were to his 37-year-old running mate, Jabbar. With Earvin's dimes and Kareem's devastating hook shot, Los Angeles had crucially tied the series at 1 game each. And with the NBA's change in their finals format, the next 3 matchups were all set to be played back home in LA. But the question still remained, could the Lakers actually get it done? They were in the exact same position last year and failed. So what would be different in 1985? Game 3, the Fabulous Forum. Earvin, knowing how much it truly meant to not only himself, his teammates, but the LA faithful, would not only go out and score 17 points and grab 9 rebounds, but also throw his usual insane amount of assists. Magic and the Showtime Lakers were truly dominant. Their high-octane offense devastated the Celtics, allowing Los Angeles to leave Game 3 with a crucial 25-point W. However, despite winning Game 5 at home thanks to a 26-point and 17-assist night from their point guard, Boston had managed to steal a victory at the Forum in Game 4, meaning if the Lakers were actually going to make history, they had to not only break 1 long-standing record, but 2. Therefore, Earvin and his Showtime running mates would lock into their game plan.
And he started out that basketball game like, fellas, I'm going to lead you to the promised land.
A mindset shift which resulted in another incredible performance from their star guard. Magic would not only score 14 points and grab 10 rebounds, but the 6'9" point guard would also throw a huge 14 assists during Game 6. An amazing performance which, as the clock wound down in Boston Garden, that saw Los Angeles make history.
LA comes to Boston and wins the world title.
Hey, look at this! What? This has removed the most odious sentence in the English language. It can never again be said that the Lakers have never beaten the Celtics.
So, could they break another long-standing Boston record and become the first team since the Bill Russell-led Celtics in the 1960s to go back-to-back as NBA champions? Well, their insane playoff debut in Game 1 of their first-round matchup versus San Antonio Spurs of 135 points sure made it seem likely. Couple this incredible evening with their dominant Game 1 performance in the Western Conference Finals versus the Houston Rockets, another Boston record being destroyed almost seemed guaranteed. However, the 1984 #1 pick, Hakeem Olajuwon, and his fellow big man, Ralph Sampson, were standing in the way. 2 big men who simply outmatched a now 39-year-old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at center. It didn't matter to Houston that the other Lakers superstar was averaging 21.3 points and 15.8 assists. They simply just steamrolled Los Angeles in a gentleman's sweep, punching their own tickets to the NBA Finals. If LA was ever gonna win another title, let alone repeat, something had to change, and soon. Therefore, Pat Riley would make a shocking move.
The conversation that I had with Magic was very straightforward. You know, I want you to become more offensive minded because it's going to make the team win.
Coach Riley's decision of switching the scoring load from their aging big man to Magic proved to be genius, as whilst their point guard still led the whole NBA in assists per game at 12.2, he was now scoring way more, dropping a career high of 46 versus the Sacramento Kings, whilst averaging 23.9 points each night.
They say I'm the new improved Magic Johnson. It's sort of like some detergent or some
soft drink, but I'm not new and improved. I'm the same Magic, but just because I got added responsibility of scoring, it's made me a better player.
Performances which would result in Johnson winning an award that he had yet to receive during his incredible career, MVP. But the question still remained, could the Lakers actually win a title with a point guard as their focal point? Was Magic, a pass-first player, actually capable of guiding his squad to more championships? Well, thanks to 19.6 point and 11.8 assist averages, the Lakers would once again dominate their way back to the NBA Finals, only losing a single game as they prepared for another battle versus Larry Bird and his Celtics. June 9th, 1987. Boston, thanks to their 1-point lead, is 7 seconds away from tying the NBA Finals at 2 wins each. If Earvin can't find a way to get his team a bucket, their championship dreams will be slipping further and further away.
5 seconds to go. Magic with a hook shot, scores with 2. To try to distract Dennis Johnson on the inbound. Bird fires it. And the Lakers have won, and Pat Riley and the Lakers dance off the court. This year's MVP, Magic Johnson, put in the winner with 2 seconds left. How fitting for the Lakers, who came from 16 back to win it right now. Let's go to James Brown.
While Los Angeles would lose Game 5 at Boston Garden, Magic's 16 point and 19 assists combined with a 40-year-old Kareem scoring 30 points in Game 6 saw Johnson and the Lakers be crowned once again as NBA champions.
The most valuable player for the 3rd time. They have won 4 championships, and Magic Johnson, an MVP, unanimous choice. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a total team effort, really. You know, we all just chipped in and just got the job done, and it's just great to be a champ again.
Does this one feel better than even the first one, Magic?
Oh, yeah, it did. Because of the fact what we did during the regular season, we carried it on into the playoffs. So it's definitely the sweetest one. I just like to say hello to my mom and dad back in Lansing, Michigan.
All right, congratulations, Magic.
So, could they finally win back-to-back titles? Or was this the final championship they were ever gonna win? Well, Pat Riley didn't think so, going so far as to guarantee that Los Angeles would win back-to-back titles.
I made that statement not based on trying to nickel and dime the players with motivation. I truly believe that this team is ready for that challenge.
Yet, after a young but rising Utah Jazz side pushed them all the way to 7 games in the second round of the playoffs, maybe this record was never going to be broken. Because their Western Conference Finals opponent, the Dallas Mavericks, had their own NBA Finals plans.
And I think it's time for the Lakers and the Celtics to step aside and for Dallas and some team in the East to be in the NBA championship.
While Dallas, much like the Jazz, would push the Lakers all the way to a 7th game, a night in which Earvin's 11 assists and 24 points on 60% shooting would save Los Angeles, the Mavs head coach was right about one thing. The NBA Finals wasn't going to be a battle between LA and Boston.
Hail to the new Eastern Conference Kings. The Detroit Pistons finally. 31 years it took them.
However, regardless of who the Lakers were set to face, Magic just had one goal: win back-to-back titles.
I want that real bad because there's nothing really left to do but that.
But after Game 5, it was actually Detroit who was just 1 game away from being crowned kings of the NBA. If Magic Johnson was ever going to achieve his goal, Earvin was going to have to step up in a huge way during both Game 6 and 7. June 19th, 1988. With 1 minute remaining in the final quarter, the Lakers' 1979 number 1 pick's 22-point and 19 assist performance was close to meaning nothing. If Los Angeles was ever going to achieve their dreams, this next minute was going to have to be their greatest.
For the Lakers, he's in for AC Green. Ooh, almost stolen by Isiah Thomas. Worthy against Sally. Scott pulls up, hits a big one, and it's 102 to 101 now. Johnson. And Kareem is in for AC Green for his offense. 4-second differential between the clock you see and the shot clock. Rodman is guarding Magic. Worthy setting a screen. Picked up by Sally on a switch. Kareem. The old man goes up and misses the shot, but goes to the line with 14 seconds to go.
Up their defense.
He's seen it all, hasn't he?
And he's done it all.
Timeout. They have no timeouts left. 13, you watch the clock. Dumars misses. Loose ball. Lakers have it with 6 seconds to go, and the Pistons are forced to foul with 5 left. No timeout for Detroit. Missed them both. 3 seconds.
They won't have time.
It's over. We go to game 7.
2 nights later, surely half a minute and up 5 was enough to guarantee a Laker championship, right?
Vinnie Johnson. And the follow-up. Joe Dumars, 105-102, and Leander is forced to foul.
What they do now is Chuck Daly has got 3 guards in the game. He's got 4 people that can shoot the 3-point shot.
He made the one. That's what he needed. Dumars to Thomas. 9 seconds to go. Leander fires a 3 and hits it. And it's 106-105.
Pistons have got to steal.
They're not going to get a chance. Green will win it. The game ends. The Lakers have won it again.
Your reaction now, back to back, and your feeling. It's unbelievable, really. I can't believe we just did it.
So, could they do the impossible and win 3 in a row? Well, their 11-0 playoff run to earn them a spot back in the 1989 finals, the 8th time in Magic's 10-year career, sure made it seem like Los Angeles was ready to three-peat. However, it was this success which ultimately began to unravel the Lakers. Because due to their dominance and the fact that the Pistons were still busy battling against a rising star in the Eastern Conference Finals, LA had time to kill. So Pat Riley, afraid his players would lose their edge, decided to run a mini training camp before the finals. Yet, the extra wear and tear on his players' bodies started to cause issues, because backup guard Byron Scott would suffer a hamstring strain that ruled him out of the finals during this camp, and in Game 2, Magic Johnson would suffer the same fate, with a 41-year-old Kareem, a 6'9" point guard, playing on one hamstring and missing their backup. It was Detroit who not only got their revenge, but destroyed Los Angeles in the process 4-0. With Abdul-Jabbar playing his final game in a Laker uniform, would Earvin ever return to the finals? Or was his reign of the NBA coming to a close? May 15th, 1990. While Magic had once again been named as league MVP, his 3rd time ever winning the prestigious award, Los Angeles, without any other superstars and worn down from their incredible decade-long 5-time championship winning run, were done. The Phoenix Suns, without any real superstar talent, simply walked right over the Lakers during the 2nd round of the playoffs in just 5 games. Couple this defeat with Pat Riley stepping down from his role and moving to broadcasting, perhaps this was truly the end of Johnson's magical run. That was the best pun I've made on this channel. Well, while many saw Pat Riley's departure as a death sentence, it was actually quite the opposite. Because the arrival of a brand new head coach, Mike Dunleavy, saw the Lakers breathe new life. You see, Coach Dunleavy was perfect for the new look Lakers. The refreshed LA Lakers would then not only go on to win 58 games during the 1990-1991 season, but in surprising fashion, thanks to 22.9 point, 8.1 rebound, and 12.7 assist averages from their superstar point guard, had actually made it back to the NBA Finals. However, despite winning Game 1 thanks to a triple-double from Magic, their opponent, the Michael Jordan-led Chicago Bulls, were simply too hungry for a championship to ever lose. Because Jordan and his Bulls had been battling Detroit for years, and given that they had finally made it over the hump in 1991, some point guard nicknamed Magic wasn't gonna stop MJ. No, his 31.2 point and 11.4 assist averages saw Chicago gentlemen sweep LA and saw Michael finally achieve his championship dreams. Yet, Earvin and the Lakers had proved that they could still find success. However, on November 7th, 1991, the whole world would be shocked by the following announcement.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today.
Earvin was devastated to be leaving the game he loved behind, but he had a plan.
He squatted down, he looked me straight in the eye, and without a hint of self-pity, he said, "When God gave me this disease, he gave it to the right person. I'm going to do something really good with this."
Earvin Magic Johnson would then go on to not only battle all the preconceived notions surrounding HIV at the time, but ultimately continue to live a fruitful and healthy life. Johnson was actually still voted in and would appear as an all-star starter later in that 1991-1992 season, and would also go on to win a gold medal alongside lifelong friend Larry Bird at the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. While we may never know what unbreakable assist records Earvin would have set if he was able to play out the second half of his career, he still holds the highest career assist average of all time at 11.2 and had incredible been to 9 finals during his 12-season NBA career. By the way, do you think the GOAT point guard title should go to Magic Johnson, or does it belong to Steph Curry? Let me know who you think and why below, or feel free to add in another player that you believe deserves the GOAT point guard title. Also, speaking of Magic Johnson, did you know that his short-time rival, Michael Jordan, has an unknown 2-year period of his career in which he came out of a 3-year retirement to suit up for the Washington Wizards? If you want to learn more about this unusual period in which a 40-year-old who had spent 3 years drinking, gambling, and golfing decided to come back to the NBA, and if MJ was any good during this time, click the video on your screen right now.
Went out of bounds.